10 years from now, you're going to look back at this exact moment, this video, this day, this decision point, and you'll have one of two reactions. Either you'll weep with gratitude because you finally chose discipline and it changed everything, or you'll weep with regret because you chose comfort and nothing changed at all. Both futures exist right now, simultaneously, waiting to see which version of you shows up tomorrow morning. And here's the unbearable truth. The you that chooses discipline today won't immediately feel different. You'll still have the same doubts, the same bills, the same struggles. But somewhere, invisibly, irrevocably, you'll have planted a seed that 10 years from now you will harvest. The question is, will you betray your future for your present? Or will you honor your design even when it hurts? I need you to understand something before we go any further. You're stuck right now, aren't you? You're caught in this cycle of starting and stopping, of good intentions that fade by Wednesday, of promises you make to yourself that you break before the week is out. And somewhere deep down, you've started to believe something devastating. You've started to believe that maybe you're just not that type of person, not disciplined, not strong enough, not chosen for the bigger life. You look around and you see other people thriving, people who seem to have it all together, and you wonder if maybe God designed something special for them but somehow forgot about you. Or worse, that he looked at you and decided you weren't worth the investment. But I'm here to tell you something that's going to shatter that lie completely. Most people think discipline is a personality trait you're born with. Like some people just naturally wake up early and eat kale and run marathons while the rest of us are destined to struggle forever. That's not just wrong, it's a prison. It's a lie that keeps you locked up, and I'm about to hand you the key. Discipline isn't a genetic gift that some people get and others don't. Discipline is a spiritual muscle that gets weak when you don't use it and gets stronger every single time you do. You're not undisciplined because you're broken. You're undisciplined because nobody ever taught you that discipline is literally the bridge between who you are right now and who God created you to be. Now, I know you've heard motivational speeches before. You've heard people yell at you to just push harder, to find your why, to get up at 5 in the morning and attack the day. And maybe it worked for a week or two, but then life happened and you fell back into the same patterns. So let me be clear about what this conversation is and what it isn't. This isn't another rah-rah speech about behavior modification. This isn't about me pumping you up so you can crash again next month. This is a complete reframe of everything you thought you knew about discipline. Because discipline is not about forcing yourself to do things you hate. Discipline is about identity restoration. It's about becoming who you actually are underneath all the lies and the fear and the failure. When you understand that God designed you on purpose, for a purpose, with a specific purpose, discipline stops being this heavy burden you carry and becomes a privilege. It becomes the language of love between you and your destiny. And here's what nobody tells you. Discipline is actually the only force in the universe powerful enough to close the gap between your potential and your reality. Not talent, not connections, not luck, discipline. And the reason you keep failing isn't because you lack willpower. It's because you're trying to use discipline to become someone impressive when you should be using discipline to become someone authentic. When you align discipline with your divine design instead of trying to meet society's expectations, everything changes. The suffering becomes purposeful. The waiting becomes preparation. And the life you thought was impossible becomes inevitable. So let me paint you a picture, because I need you to see this clearly. Imagine a painting of Rembrandt hidden in someone's attic, covered in dust, mistaken for trash. Maybe it's behind old furniture. Maybe someone's using it to cover a hole in the wall. It doesn't matter. What matters is this: that painting is worth millions of dollars. But for decades, it hangs there in darkness, unrecognized, unappreciated, treated like it's worthless. Now, here's the crucial part: that painting didn't become valuable the day someone discovered it and took it to an auction house. It was always valuable. Discovery didn't create the value. Discovery just revealed what was already true. You are that painting. God created a masterpiece when He made you. He put gifts in you, purpose in you, a specific assignment that only you can fulfill in the exact way you're supposed to fulfill it. But somewhere along the way, you got covered. Other people's opinions piled up on you like dust. Past failures, old shame, things people said about you when you were too young to know they were lying. All of that covered the real you. Cultural lies about who you should be, what success looks like, what makes someone valuable, more dust. And eventually, you couldn't even see the original design anymore. You started believing you were the dust instead of the masterpiece underneath. And this is where most people get discipline completely wrong. They think discipline is about creating value, about making yourself into something impressive, about building a new you from scratch. But that's not what discipline does. Discipline doesn't create value. Discipline removes the dust. It's the daily, sometimes tedious, often invisible work of wiping away everything that hides your true design. It's choosing truth over lies, one decision at a time. It's saying no to the chaos so you can say yes to the calling. It's waking up early not to prove something to the world, but to remember something about yourself before the world gets its hands on you. Think about what happens when we live covered, when we forget what's underneath all that dust. We start performing instead of being. We start pretending instead of presenting. We settle for survival when we were designed for dominion. We work jobs that drain us, maintain relationships that diminish us, chase dreams that were never ours to begin with, all because we can't see clearly enough to recognize what God put in us. And the tragedy isn't just that we suffer. The tragedy is that the world suffers too, because the unique contribution you were supposed to make never gets made. The problem you were designed to solve never gets solved. The people you were supposed to help never get helped. Your absence from your assignment creates a hole in the universe. But here's the hope that I need you to grab onto with both hands. You're not building a new life. You're excavating your real one. Every time you choose discipline, you're removing another layer of dust. Every time you say no to something that doesn't serve your purpose, you're wiping the canvas a little cleaner. Every time you show up when you don't feel like it, keep going when you want to quit, tell the truth when lying would be easier, you're revealing more of the original design. And one day, you'll wake up and realize you can finally see it. You can finally see you. Not who people said you were, not who your past convinced you that you are, but who God designed you to be from the very beginning. Now let me tell you another story, because I want you to understand how God views discipline. There was a father who had 2 sons, and he had built a thriving business over his lifetime. Blood, sweat, tears, wisdom, everything he had went into this business. And he told both of his sons the same thing: one day this will be yours. Both sons heard the promise. Both sons believed it. But they responded very differently. The first son was naturally talented, charismatic, creative, full of ideas. When he walked into a room, people noticed. When he spoke, people listened. Everyone who met him assumed he would take over the business. How could he not? He had the gift. But here's what people didn't see. He lacked discipline. He'd show up when he felt inspired, disappear when he got bored. He'd start projects with enthusiasm and abandon them when they got difficult. He was brilliant in bursts, but unreliable in the long run. The second son was different. Less naturally gifted, maybe. Quieter. Didn't turn heads when he entered a room. But he had something his brother didn't. He showed up every single day, early, consistent, faithful, in the small things nobody else wanted to do. When his father asked him to organize the storage room, he organized the storage room. When his father asked him to review spreadsheets, he reviewed spreadsheets. Not glamorous work, not work that made people admire him, but work that needed to be done, and he did it. Years went by. The business grew. The father got older. And the time came for him to make his decision about who would inherit everything he built. And you know what he did? He gave the business to the second son, not the talented one, not the charismatic one, the disciplined one. And when the first son protested, when he said, "But Father, I'm more talented, I have better ideas, people love me," the father looked at him and said something that should shake us all to our core. He said, "Son, I gave you talent as a gift. Talent is what I gave you, but discipline is what you give me. And I can only give you responsibility when you prove you can handle it. I can only trust you with what's mine when you've shown me you can be trusted with what's yours. Your brother may not be as naturally gifted as you, but he proved something far more important. He proved he'll be there. He proved he'll finish. He proved he values what I value. And that's who I can build a legacy with." Now, I need you to sit with that for a moment, because this is about so much more than a story. This is about inheritance. This is about what God actually entrusts us with and why. See, God gives all of us gifts, talents, abilities, opportunities, vision, dreams. He's generous with the giving. But here's what breaks my heart when I look at the body of Christ, when I look at humanity in general. We confuse the gift with the assignment. We think because God gave us the gift, we automatically get the assignment. But that's not how it works. The gift is grace, the assignment is trust, and trust has to be earned through discipline. How many blessings have we forfeited not because God didn't offer them, not because He changed His mind, not because we weren't worthy, but because we didn't prove trustworthy? How many doors has God wanted to open for you that stayed closed because you couldn't even walk through the door that's already open? How many times has God said, I want to give you more, but you haven't been faithful with what you have? And we get angry at God. We question His goodness. We wonder why He's blessing everyone else but not us. But the truth is, God isn't withholding from you. He's waiting for you to prove that you won't waste what He gives. Waiting for you to show Him that you understand the weight of the gift. And this leads me to something I've learned after decades of watching people, of studying success and failure, of observing what separates those who fulfill their purpose from those who die with their potential still inside them. I've learned this. A garden and a wilderness can have the exact same soil, the same rain, the same sunlight, the same seeds available to them, but they produce completely different outcomes. Why? One word: cultivation, discipline. A garden doesn't happen accidentally. You don't just throw seeds on the ground and hope for the best. You prepare the soil, you plant with intention, you water consistently, you pull the weeds before they choke out the good plants, you protect what you're growing from predators and parasites. That's cultivation. That's discipline. And neither does the life God designed for you happen accidentally. I've watched it happen over and over. Someone gets a vision from God, a clear word, a specific direction. They get excited. They tell everyone. They make plans. And then nothing. The vision dies not because it wasn't real, not because God changed His mind, but because they never cultivated it. They never did the daily, unglamorous work of keeping the weeds out. And listen, those weeds grow fast. Distraction is a weed. Procrastination is a weed. Other people's opinions are weeds. Fear disguised as wisdom is a weed. And if you don't discipline yourself to pull them out daily, they will choke out everything God planted in you. But here's the hope, and I need you to hear this: if you've let your garden turn into a wilderness, the wilderness can become a garden again. The same soil is still there. The same sun still shines. The same rain still falls. You haven't missed your chance. You've just been neglecting your cultivation. But the moment you pick up the tools of discipline again, the moment you say, I'm going back to the garden, I'm going to cultivate what God gave me, everything starts to shift. It doesn't happen overnight. Gardens don't grow in a day, but they do grow. And every single day you show up to tend your purpose, you're one day closer to harvest. Now let me break down what this actually means practically, because I don't want you leaving this conversation inspired but confused. First truth you need to understand: discipline reveals design. God designed you specifically, not generically. But most people live generically because they've never disciplined themselves enough to discover their specific design. Think about it. When you're undisciplined, how do you live? Reactively. You respond to circumstances instead of creating them. You answer other people's emergencies instead of advancing your own assignment. You let culture, media, peer pressure, family expectations, you let all of that program you, and you end up living someone else's life in your body. But when you discipline yourself, when you take control of your time, your attention, your energy, your responses, suddenly there's space for revelation. When you control your time, you actually hear God's voice more clearly because you're not drowning in noise. When you control your consumption, what you watch, what you read, what you listen to, you start to discern your true appetite, what you actually hunger for versus what you were taught to crave. When you control your reactions, when you stop letting every emotion dictate your behavior, you discover your real character, who you actually are when you're not just surviving. Discipline doesn't create who you are. Let me say that again because it's crucial. Discipline does not create who you are. It reveals who you are. It pulls back the curtain on your true nature, your actual design, your God-given identity. And that revelation is both terrifying and liberating at the same time. Terrifying because you realize how far you've drifted from your design. Liberating because you realize you can come back home. Second truth. Here's the paradox that confuses everybody. How can restriction lead to freedom? People hear the word discipline and they think prison, they think chains, they think saying no to everything fun. But here's how it actually works. And once you understand this, discipline stops feeling like punishment and starts feeling like power. Every time you say no to something that doesn't serve your design, you're saying yes to something that does. Every boundary you set creates space for possibility. Every appetite you control gives you power over your life instead of giving your life power over you. The undisciplined person thinks they're free because they follow every impulse, every desire, every whim. They eat what they want when they want. They spend what they want when they want. They say what they want when they want. They sleep with who they want when they want, and they call that freedom. But I'm here to tell you, that's not freedom, that's slavery. They're enslaved to mood, to circumstance, to other people's agendas, to the tyranny of the immediate. They have no control over their lives because they have no control over themselves. But the disciplined person, the one who looks restricted from the outside, they're the most free person in the room. Why? Because they've mastered the one thing that determines everything else. Themselves. They've mastered their appetites, so their appetites don't master them. They've mastered their schedule, so their schedule doesn't master them. They've mastered their emotions, so their emotions don't master them. And that mastery creates freedom, the freedom to choose their response instead of being controlled by their reaction, the freedom to build wealth instead of being trapped in debt, the freedom to pursue purpose instead of being stuck in survival. Let me get specific. Financial discipline creates wealth freedom. When you discipline yourself to budget, to save, to invest, to delay gratification, you're building the freedom to make choices based on purpose instead of panic. You're building the freedom to say no to opportunities that pay well but cost your soul. You're building the freedom to be generous because you're not desperate. Relational discipline creates emotional freedom. When you discipline yourself to have boundaries, to communicate clearly, to leave what's toxic and invest in what's healthy, you're building the freedom to love without fear, to connect without codependency, to be yourself without performance. And spiritual discipline, this is the big one. Spiritual discipline creates purpose freedom. When you discipline yourself to stay connected to God, to listen more than you speak, to obey even when you don't understand, you're building the freedom to walk in your calling without being derailed by criticism, comparison, or confusion. So, freedom isn't the absence of boundaries. Freedom is the presence of the right boundaries. And discipline is how you build those boundaries strong enough to protect everything that matters. Third truth, and this might be the most important, discipline is love in action. Stay with me here. If you really loved your future self, if you truly cared about the person you're going to be 10 years from now, how would you treat your present self? Would you let your present self eat garbage, waste time, stay in toxic relationships, avoid hard conversations, settle for less than what God called you to? No. You'd protect your present self from those things because you love your future self too much to sabotage them. If you really loved your children, what example would you set? Would you model inconsistency, excuse-making, quitting when things get hard? Or would you show them what it looks like to keep promises, to finish what you start, to honor your word even when nobody's watching? If you really loved your purpose, the assignment God gave you, the problem you're supposed to solve, the people you're supposed to help, what would you sacrifice for it? What would you protect it from? Discipline is proof of love. Not love for outcomes, although outcomes matter, but love for process, love for growth, love for God's investment in you. When you're undisciplined, when you choose the easy thing over the right thing, when you pick comfort over calling, you're essentially saying something devastating. You're saying, I don't love myself enough to protect my future. I don't love my purpose enough to sacrifice for it. I don't love God's gift enough to steward it well. Now that's harsh, I know, but it's true. And sometimes the truth has to wound before it can heal. But here's the beautiful flip side. Every time you choose discipline, you're writing a love letter to tomorrow. You're saying, I love you enough to make today uncomfortable. I love you enough to say no to what's easy so I can say yes to what's right. I love you enough to plant seeds now that you'll harvest later. And that love, that self-respect, that honor for your own design, it changes everything. It changes how you see yourself, how you carry yourself, how you make decisions, how you show up in the world. Fourth truth, small disciplines create massive destinies. Nobody drifts into greatness. Let me say that louder for the people in the back. Nobody accidentally becomes who God designed them to be. It doesn't happen by chance. It doesn't happen by hoping. It doesn't happen by trying really hard every once in a while. It happens through small, daily, mostly invisible disciplines that compound over time. Make your bed. Show up early. Keep your word. Finish what you start. Read instead of scroll. Pray instead of panic. Save instead of spend. Build instead of consume. These seem insignificant when you're doing them. Nobody's applauding when you make your bed. Nobody's giving you a trophy when you show up 15 minutes early. Nobody sees the book you read instead of the show you skip. But these small disciplines are actually atomic. They're the building blocks of character. And character is the foundation of destiny. David didn't become king by slaying Goliath. That's when people noticed him, but that's not when he became king quality. He became king quality by faithfully tending sheep when nobody was watching, by protecting what was entrusted to him even though it seemed insignificant, by practicing courage in private so he'd have it in public. Those years in the wilderness with the sheep, those were the years that built the king, and Goliath just revealed what the wilderness had already created. Here's the spiritual mathematics that most people never understand. Consistency multiplies, faithfulness opens doors, and small obedience prepares you for large assignment. God doesn't trust you with the palace until he sees you faithful in the pasture. He doesn't give you the platform until he sees you faithful in the preparation. He doesn't release the promise until he sees you faithful in the process. And that faithfulness, that discipline, it looks like small daily choices that feel meaningless in the moment, but are actually building the container that can hold your destiny. You're not disciplined because you've arrived. You're arriving because you're disciplined. And every single day you stay faithful in the small thing, you're qualifying yourself for the bigger thing. Not because you're earning it through works, grace already gave it to you, but because you're proving you won't waste it through witness. And this brings me to the fifth truth, the hardest one, the discipline of waiting. Oh, this is where most people quit. This is where dreams die and callings get abandoned. Because God gives vision quickly but builds character slowly. He shows you the destination in a moment, but the journey takes years. And the time between your calling and your crowning, that gap, it's not empty, it's essential. It's where God tests not your talent, but your trustworthiness. It's where he builds not your skills, but your spirit. Joseph had a dream when he was 17 years old. God showed him exactly what his destiny looked like, his brothers bowing down, his father honoring him, authority and influence and leadership, crystal clear vision. But he didn't see that vision fulfilled until he was 30 years old. 13 years. 13 years of discipline in places nobody saw. In Potiphar's house, serving faithfully even though it wasn't his calling. In prison, maintaining integrity even though he was innocent. In obscurity, staying faithful even though there was no evidence his faithfulness mattered. Those 13 years looked like delay, but they were actually development. They were building the character that could handle the palace, the wisdom that could steward the power, the humility that could carry the authority. Because here's what would have happened if God had given 17-year-old Joseph the throne. It would have destroyed him. The gift would have been bigger than the character, and he would have imploded. So God made him wait, not to punish him, but to prepare him, not to deny him, but to develop him. And if you're in the waiting season right now, if you've been faithful and nothing seems to be happening, if you've been disciplined and the breakthrough hasn't come yet, hear me. What feels like delay is actually development. God is building in you what he wants to build through you. He's expanding your capacity, deepening your roots, strengthening your foundation, because the weight of your destiny requires the strength of your character, and character is built in the weight. So how do you stay disciplined when nothing seems to be happening? How do you keep preparing when there's no evidence your preparation matters? How do you trust God's timing when his timeline doesn't match yours? You remember this, God's timing is always right. Not always comfortable, but always right. And your job isn't to understand the timeline. Your job is to stay faithful in the assignment. Keep showing up. Keep doing what he told you to do. Keep growing even when you're not glowing. Keep building even when nobody's watching. Keep serving even when nobody's applauding. Because the day is coming when everything you built in secret will be revealed in public. The day is coming when every seed you planted in tears will produce a harvest of joy. The day is coming when everyone who told you that you were wasting your time will see that you were actually investing in your time. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, okay, Myles, I understand the why. I get it. Discipline reveals design. Discipline creates freedom. Discipline is love. Small things matter. Waiting is preparation. I understand all that. But what do I actually do? Where do I start? Because I failed so many times before, and I'm scared to try again and fail again. And I love that question because it means you're serious. It means you're ready to move from inspiration to implementation. So let me give you the how. Let me give you practical steps you can start tomorrow morning. Not overwhelming, not complicated, just honest. First, the morning anchor. Before you do anything else, before you touch your phone, before you jump into the chaos, before you let the world get its hands on you, claim the first hour. And I know what you're thinking. I don't have an extra hour. Yes, you do. You just have to take it. Wake up 30 to 60 minutes earlier than you think you need to. I know it's hard. I know you're tired. Do it anyway. Use that time to remember who you are and whose you are. Not for productivity, for priority, scripture, silence, surrender. This isn't about religion. This isn't about checking a box so God will bless you. This is about realignment. You're setting your internal compass before the world tries to spin you in every direction. You're downloading truth before downloading lies. You're connecting to your source before connecting to your social media. This one discipline will change everything else because it changes who shows up to everything else. When you start your day with God, you show up to your job as someone who knows their worth isn't tied to their performance. You show up to your relationships as someone who's already loved, so you don't need to perform for acceptance. You show up to your problems as someone who's connected to the problem solver. The morning anchor isn't just about spending time with God. It's about becoming the person who can handle everything the day throws at you. Second, the boundary audit. This is going to be uncomfortable, but it's necessary. Take inventory of your life right now. Get honest, brutally honest. What are you saying yes to that God didn't assign? What relationships are draining your purpose? What habits are stealing your time? What fears are controlling your decisions? What obligations are you carrying that were never yours to carry? Write them down. Don't just think about them, write them down. Because something powerful happens when you see it on paper. You can't lie to yourself anymore. You can't pretend it's not that bad. And then, one by one, create boundaries. Not out of anger, not out of judgment, not out of proving something to somebody, out of love for your design. This will be uncomfortable. People will be upset. People will call you selfish. People will accuse you of changing. Do it anyway. Your destiny is more important than their comfort. Your assignment is more sacred than their approval. And boundaries aren't walls to keep people out. Boundaries are fences to keep your purpose in. They're protection, not rejection. They're saying, I love you, but I love God's call on my life more. I love you, but I won't betray my future for your present. I love you, but I have to be faithful to what God told me to do, and that means some things have to change. Third, the completion commitment. Choose one thing, just one, that you've been avoiding. A project you started and abandoned, a conversation you need to have but keep postponing, a goal you set but never pursued, something that when you think about it, you feel that sting of incompletion. Choose one and commit to finishing it within 30 days. Not perfectly, just finished. Because completion builds spiritual momentum, and momentum is the antidote to stagnation. When you finish something, anything, you're proving to yourself that you can keep promises. You're building the muscle of follow-through. You're creating evidence that you're not who you used to be. Break it into daily tasks. Make them small enough that you can't make excuses. And then do them whether you feel like it or not. Let completion become your new identity, not just your goal. Fourth, the character check. Every evening before you go to bed, ask yourself 3 questions. Did I keep my word today to others and to myself? Where did I choose convenience over character? What will I do differently tomorrow? This isn't about shame. This isn't about beating yourself up for every mistake. This is about awareness. You can't grow what you don't measure. You can't change what you don't acknowledge. And here's what will happen. At first, those questions will sting. You'll realize how often you broke your word, how many times you chose easy over right, how much you need to change. But over time, over weeks and months, you'll start seeing growth. You'll start noticing patterns. You'll start catching yourself before you make the wrong choice, because you know you're going to ask yourself that question later. This practice builds the self-awareness that makes lasting change possible. And fifth, the 90-day covenant. Make a covenant with God and with yourself. For the next 90 days, you're going to show up to your design with ruthless consistency. Not perfection. I'm not asking for perfection. Consistency. You're going to do the morning. You're going to honor the boundaries. You're going to complete the project. You're going to check your character. 90 days. Why 90 days? Because that's long enough to see real change, but short enough to maintain focus. Longer than a month, but shorter than forever. It's doable, but demanding. And at the end of those 90 days, I promise you, you won't be the same person. You'll have evidence that discipline works. Not because I said so, not because you read it in a book, but because you lived it. You'll see the fruit. You'll feel the difference. You'll have testimonies. And that evidence will give you the faith to keep going, to commit to another 90 days and another, until discipline isn't something you do, but someone you are. So let's land this plane. Let's bring it all home. When we started this conversation, I talked about two futures, two versions of you 10 years from now. One weeping with gratitude, one weeping with regret. And I asked you which future you're going to choose. Now you understand that the gap between where you are and where God designed you to be isn't a mystery. It's not about luck. It's not about talent. It's not about who you know or where you came from. It's a discipline deficiency. But here's the beautiful truth. The truth I need you to take with you when this video ends. Discipline isn't some impossible standard you'll never reach. It's not reserved for special people or super saints or those who have it all together. Discipline is a daily choice to align with your design instead of drifting with distraction. It's a daily choice to say yes to your future instead of betraying it for your present. It's a daily choice to honor what God put in you instead of hiding it under fear and excuses. You learn today that discipline reveals who you really are, that it's actually love in action, that small daily choices create massive life change, and that the waiting season isn't wasted if you're faithful in it. You learn that freedom comes from the right boundaries, not the absence of boundaries. You learn that God isn't withholding from you, but waiting for you to prove you're ready for what He wants to give. And more than learning, you receive practical steps: the morning anchor, the boundary audit, the completion commitment, the character check, the 90-day covenant. These aren't theory, these are tools. Use them. So before you close this video, before you move on to the next thing, I want you to receive something deep in your spirit. I want you to let this truth settle into the places where the lies have been living. You are not undisciplined by nature. You've been undisciplined by neglect. But that changes today. That changes right now. You are not a project to be fixed. You are a masterpiece to be revealed. And discipline is not your enemy. Discipline is the key that unlocks the life God always intended for you. You were designed on purpose, for a purpose, with a purpose. And every single time you choose discipline over distraction, every time you choose character over convenience, every time you choose your future over your feelings, you're voting for the real you, the you God sees, the you your future needs, the you that's been waiting in the wings, waiting for permission to finally show up. Well, consider this your permission. Consider this your invitation. Consider this your moment. If this resonated with something deep in your spirit, if you felt that stirring that says, this is for me, this is my time, this is my turning point, I need you to do something, hit that like button. Not for the algorithm, not for me, but as a declaration, as a stake in the ground that says, today is the day something shifts. Today is the day I stop making excuses and start making progress. Today is the day I stop betraying my future and start building it. Leave a comment and tell me which practice you're committing to first. The morning anchor, the boundary audit, the completion commitment. Tell me, because when you declare it publicly, when you put it out there for the world to see, you're 42% more likely to follow through. That's not motivation, that's science. Your declaration creates accountability. So declare it, own it, commit to it, and subscribe to this channel, because this conversation we just had, this is just the beginning. This is just the foundation. We're building a community here of people who refuse to settle for less than what God designed. People who are tired of watching their potential die inside them. People who are ready to do the work nobody sees so they can live the life everyone dreams about. That's who we are. That's what we're about. So join us, subscribe, stay connected, because your next breakthrough might be in the next video. The life you've been dreaming about, the life you see when you close your eyes at night, the life where you're fulfilled and purposeful and making the impact you were created to make, that's not a fantasy. That's not wishful thinking. That's not some impossible standard you'll never reach. That's a blueprint. That's the original design. That's who you actually are underneath all the dust. And discipline is how you build it. One choice, one day, one step at a time. Now go. Your destiny is waiting. And honestly, it's been waiting long enough. It's time to stop preparing to get ready to start. It's time to start today, right now, this moment. Because 10 years from now, you're going to look back at this exact moment and you're going to weep. The only question is, will it be tears of gratitude or tears of regret? You decide. Choose discipline. Choose your design. Choose your destiny. Now go build the life God created you for.